Jake Morrison crouched behind a broken wall and checked his rifle. The alien weapon fire had stopped for now, but he knew it would not last long. Smoke filled the air around the human settlement of New Haven. Buildings burned in the distance. The smell of melted metal and burned plastic made his nose wrinkle. "Morrison, we need to move!" Ryan Torres called out from across the street. His squad leader pointed toward a group of civilians hiding near a damaged transport vehicle. "Help me get these people to the evacuation zone." Jake nodded and ran toward the scared colonists. There were 12 of them, men, women, and children, who had lived on this planet for only 2 years. They had come here to build a new life among the stars. Now they just wanted to go home alive. "Stay low and follow me," Jake told them. He led the group through the rubble-filled streets. The alien ships had been bombing the colony for 3 hours. The Zalathi Empire wanted this planet, and they did not care about the humans living here. A little girl no older than 6 walked beside him. She held a stuffed animal that was missing one arm. "Are the monsters going to hurt us?" she asked. Jake looked down at her. "No monsters here, just soldiers like me. We are going to get you somewhere safe." The group moved through what used to be the market district. Broken glass covered the ground. Store signs hung at strange angles. Jake kept his eyes moving, watching for any sign of alien troops. The Zalathi were tall creatures with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. They wore armor that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Their weapons could melt through steel. "Contact front!" Ryan shouted from the head of the group. 3 Zalathi soldiers had appeared around a corner. Their weapons began to glow with orange light. Jake pushed the civilians behind a large piece of concrete. "Stay down!" He raised his rifle and fired at the aliens. The bullets sparked off their armor but made them take cover. Ryan threw a grenade. The explosion shook the ground and filled the air with dust. When it cleared, the Zalathi were gone. But Jake could hear more of them moving in the buildings around them. "We need to move faster," Ryan said. "The evacuation ships leave in 30 minutes. They ran through 2 more blocks without seeing any aliens. The evacuation zone was a flat area near the spaceport where human ships waited to take people off the planet. Jake could see it in the distance. They were almost safe. Then the ground shook. A massive alien ship appeared overhead, blocking out the sun. It was shaped like a giant arrowhead and covered in weapon ports. Warning lights flashed along its hull. "Orbital bombardment incoming!" someone screamed over the radio. "Take cover immediately!" Jake looked around. There was nowhere to hide. The buildings near them were too damaged to provide shelter. The evacuation zone was still 200 meters away, too far to reach in time. That was when he heard the crying. It came from a collapsed building to their left, a small voice, high and scared. But it was not human. The sound was different, like musical notes mixed with words. "Morrison, we have to go!" Ryan grabbed his arm. "Those are Zalathi ships up there." Jake stared at the ruined building. Someone was trapped inside, someone young and afraid. "There is a kid in there." "It is not our kid," Ryan said. "It is one of them." The crying continued. Jake could see movement in the shadows between the broken walls. Something small with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. The child was stuck under a metal beam. It looked up at Jake with the same fear he had seen in the human girl's eyes. "Morrison, that is an order! We leave now!" Jake looked at his squad leader, then at the scared civilians, then at the alien child. The ships overhead began to glow. In seconds, energy beams would rain down and turn everything to ash. He made his choice. Jake ran toward the collapsed building. Behind him, Ryan cursed and ordered the civilians to run for the evacuation zone. Jake could hear their feet on the concrete as they fled. The alien child tried to move when it saw Jake coming. It made scared noises and pulled at the beam, holding it down. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "It is okay," he said softly. "I am not going to hurt you." The child stopped struggling and stared at him. Its eyes were huge and completely black. Tears ran down its blue cheeks. It was so young, maybe the same age as the human girl with the stuffed animal. Jake grabbed the metal beam and lifted. It was heavy, but his armor gave him extra strength. The alien child crawled out and stood up. It was small, barely reaching Jake's waist. Strange markings on its forehead glowed with soft light. The sky above them began to burn. Jake looked up and saw death coming down in the form of orange energy beams. They lit up the clouds and made the air scream. He had maybe 2 seconds before. Everything around them turned to fire. Without thinking, Jake wrapped his arms around the alien child and threw himself on top of it. He covered the small body with his own and hoped his armor would be enough. The world exploded. Heat washed over him like being inside a star. His armor's cooling system screamed warnings in his ear. The energy beam hit his back and shoulders, and he felt like someone had dropped a mountain on him. Pain shot through every part of his body, but his armor held. The advanced human technology absorbed most of the blast and spread the heat across its surface. Jake felt himself getting burned, but he stayed conscious. The alien child beneath him was safe. When the bombardment stopped, Jake could not move. His armor had locked up to protect his broken bones. He could taste blood in his mouth, but he could feel the alien child breathing under him. It was alive. Footsteps approached, heavy boots on concrete. Jake tried to turn his head but could not. A shadow fell across them. "What do we have here?" The voice spoke perfect English but with a strange accent that made each word sound like music. More footsteps. Jake heard alien voices talking in their own language. They sounded surprised. Someone rolled Jake over carefully. He found himself looking up at a tall Zalathi soldier. The alien stared down at him with those huge black eyes. Its 4 arms moved, as it examined Jake's armor. The alien child sat up and spoke quickly in its own language. It pointed at Jake and made gestures with its small hands. The soldiers looked at each other. One of them, clearly the leader, knelt down beside Jake. It looked at him for a long moment, then spoke into a communication device on its wrist. "You saved our young one," the soldier said in English. "Why?" Jake tried to answer, but his throat was too dry. He managed to whisper one word. "Child." The soldier tilted its head. It looked at the young alien, who was now holding Jake's gloved hand with both of its small ones. "Child," the soldier repeated. It stood up and gave orders to the others. 2 aliens lifted Jake carefully and put him on a floating stretcher. The young one walked beside him, still holding his hand. As they carried him toward a Zalathi transport ship, Jake saw the ruins of New Haven burning in the distance. He had saved 1 life. He did not know it yet, but that single act would change the fate of 2 species forever. The last thing Jake saw before losing consciousness was the alien child's glowing markings pulsing, with soft light like a heartbeat made of stars. Jake woke up in a room filled with soft blue light. Everything felt wrong. The bed was too long for his body and shaped like a curve instead of flat. The walls moved with slow patterns of color that hurt his eyes. Strange sounds came from machines. He could not see. His body ached, but not as much as it should have. Jake remembered the burning pain when the energy beam hit him. Now he felt stiff and sore, like after a hard training exercise. He tried to sit up and was surprised when his body obeyed. "You are awake." The voice came from across the room. Jake turned and saw a Zalathi standing near the door. This one was different from the soldiers. It wore no armor, just flowing robes that changed color as it moved. Its skin was lighter blue than the others, and gold markings covered its arms. "Where am I?" Jake asked. His voice came out as a croak. "You are on Nexus Prime, the home world of our people." The alien moved closer. "I am Zara Lynn. I study your species. I have been waiting for you to wake up." Jake looked around the room again. It was definitely not human. The ceiling was too high, and everything curved in ways that made his eyes water. "How long was I unconscious?" 12 of your days." Zara Lynn sat down in a chair that grew out of the floor as she approached it. "Your injuries were severe. Our medical technology repaired most of the damage." "The child," Jake said suddenly. "The small one I protected. Is it okay?" Zara Lynn's large black eyes seemed to brighten. "Keth Knox is well. He has asked about you every day since you arrived." "Keth Knox?" "That is his name. In your language, it means something like bright star. He is the son of Thyravel, one of our most important nobles." Jake processed this information slowly. He had saved the child of an alien noble. "Am I a prisoner?" "That is complicated." Zara Lynn touched a device on her wrist, and images appeared in the air between them. They showed Jake throwing himself over the alien child as the energy beam came down. "This recording has been seen by many of our people. What you did is difficult for us to understand." "I protected a child. Any human would have done the same thing." "Would they?" Zara Lynn leaned forward. "You knew Keth Knox was Zalathi. You knew, we are at war with your species. Yet you risked your life to save him." Jake thought about this. He was just a scared kid. His species did not matter. Zara Lynn made a sound that might have been laughter. "This is what makes your people so strange to us. In Zalathi culture, family lines and tribal loyalty are everything. We do not risk ourselves for the children of enemies. Then how do wars ever end?" The question seemed to surprise Zara Lynn. She was quiet for a long moment. "They do not end. They pause until the next generation continues them." Before Jake could respond, the door opened. A tall Zalathi entered, moving with the grace of a trained warrior. This one wore dark armor decorated with silver patterns. Behind her walked a small figure that Jake recognized immediately. "Keth Knox," Jake said softly. The young alien ran toward the bed, but the adult caught him with one of her 4 arms. She spoke sharply in the Zalathi language. Keth Knox looked up at her with pleading eyes and spoke back in a tone that sounded like every child asking for permission. "Thyravel says he may approach, but carefully," Zara Lynn translated. "Your injuries are still healing." The adult alien, Thyravel, released Keth Knox. The child walked slowly to Jake's bedside and looked up at him. His large eyes were bright with excitement. "You are awake," Keth Knox said in careful English. "I was scared you would not wake up. You speak my language?" Zara Lynn taught me. "I wanted to talk to you." Kethnox reached out and touched Jake's hand with one small finger. "Thank you for saving me." Jake looked from the child to the tall female standing near the door. Even without knowing Zalathi expressions, he could tell Thyravel was studying him carefully. "Tell her I am glad her son is safe," Jake said to Zara Lynn. Zara Lynn translated. Thyravel replied in a long string of musical words. Her voice sounded angry, but not at Jake. She seemed to be arguing with herself. "What did she say?" Jake asked. "She says you have created a problem that no one knows how to solve." Zara Lynn looked uncomfortable. "In our culture, when someone saves the life of a noble child, a great debt is created. The family must repay this debt or lose honor. I do not want anything from her." "That makes it worse," Zara Lynn said. "If you demanded payment, Thyravel could give you money or weapons, and the debt would be settled. But you ask for nothing. This means the debt can only be repaid by offering you something of equal value to what you gave. What did I give?" "Your life," Kethnox said quietly. "You were willing to die for me." Jake looked at the small alien and felt something twist in his chest. The child was so young, so innocent. His own species had been trying to kill him, but Jake had protected him anyway. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. Thyravel spoke again, longer this time. Her voice carried the weight of authority and decision. "She wants to know why you did it," Zara Lynn translated. "She needs to understand your reasoning before she can decide what to do with you." Jake thought carefully before answering. "In human culture, children are precious. All children, no matter where they come from. We believe that protecting the young is the most important duty of adults. It does not matter if the child is human or alien or something else entirely. If a child is in danger, we help," Zara Lynn translated. Thyravel listened, then asked a question. She wants to know if this is true for all humans, or just you. "All humans," Jake said without hesitation. "Some might hesitate because they are afraid or confused, but in the end, we cannot let children suffer. It goes against everything we are." Thyravel and Zara Lynn had a long conversation in their own language. Jake caught a few words that sounded familiar from his brief military training about alien languages. He heard honor, debt, and impossible several times. Finally, Thyravel turned to Jake and spoke directly to him in heavily accented English. "You saved my son. By our laws, I owe you a life debt that can never be fully repaid. But you are also an enemy of our people. The military. Council wants me to execute you as a prisoner of war." "I understand," Jake said. "I knew the risks when I made my choice. Do you regret it?" Jake looked at Kethnox, who was watching him with those huge, dark eyes. The child's markings glowed softly with what Jake was beginning to recognize as contentment. "No." Jake said, "I would do it again." Thyravel studied him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out with one of her hands and placed it gently on Jake's shoulder. Her touch was surprisingly warm. "Then we have a problem," she said, "because I cannot kill the one who saved my child, but I cannot let you return to your people with knowledge of our world." "What will you do?" Thyravel looked at her son, then at Zara Lynn, then back at Jake. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of a decision that would change everything. "I will invoke the ancient law of Kethvel Nara. You will become family to us, protected by our honor and bound by our laws. But first, there is much you must learn about our people and our ways." Jake did not understand all the words, but he understood the meaning. His life was about to become more complicated than he had ever imagined. Knox smiled and squeezed Jake's hand. At least he would have one friend in this strange new world. 3 weeks had passed since Jake woke up in the alien medical facility. He now lived in a small room connected to Thyravel's family quarters. The walls were still the wrong color and the furniture still felt strange, but he was getting used to it. Knox visited him every day. The young alien was teaching Jake basic Zalathi words while Jake taught him more English. They had become unlikely friends, playing simple games and sharing stories about their different worlds. In human stories, do the heroes always win? Knox asked one morning as they sat on Jake's curved bed. Usually, Jake said, but sometimes they have to sacrifice something important to save others. Like you did for me? Jake nodded. Like that. Knox was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mother is in trouble because of me. What do you mean? The military leaders are angry with her. They say she should have killed you already. But she cannot, because of the life debt. Jake had learned about the life debt from Zara Leen. In Zalathi culture, saving someone's life created a bond that could not be broken. The saved person and their family owed everything to their rescuer. But Jake was an enemy soldier, which made the situation impossible. Where is your mother now? Jake asked. Meeting with Commander Vex Dern again. He comes here every few days to argue with her. As if summoned by his name, the sound of raised voices came from the main chamber. Jake could hear Thyravel's voice, musical but firm, mixed with a deeper male voice that sounded angry. The argument grew louder. Jake heard his own name mentioned several times, along with words he was beginning to recognize. Enemy, danger, and death. Knox moved closer to Jake. I am scared, he whispered. It will be okay, Jake said, though he was not sure he believed it. The voices stopped suddenly. A few minutes later, Thyravel entered Jake's room. She looked tired, and her usually perfect posture seemed bent with worry. Commander Vex Dern has given me an ultimatum, she said without greeting. I have 3 days to execute you, or he will declare me a traitor to the Empire. Maybe that would be for the best, Jake said. I do not want to cause problems for your family. Thyravel's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger. You would ask me to break the most sacred law of our people? To murder the one who saved my child? I would ask you to protect your son's future. His future will be meaningless if I become a creature without honor. Knox looked back and forth between them. There must be another way. Thyravel sat down in the chair that grew from the floor. There is, but it is dangerous, and may be seen as an even greater betrayal. What is it? Jake asked. I could invoke the ritual of Vel Nara Keth. It would make you officially part of our family with all the protections that brings. But it would also mean renouncing your humanity and accepting Zalathi law as your own. Jake thought about this. What would happen to me? You would live among us as a protected family member. You would learn our ways and perhaps one day serve as a bridge between our peoples. But you could never return to human space. And if I refuse? Thyravel's expression grew sad. Then I must choose between my honor and my duty to the Empire. Either choice will destroy me. Jake looked at Knox, who was watching him with those huge dark eyes. The child had been through so much already. He did not deserve to see his mother torn apart by impossible choices. There is a third option, Jake said slowly. What if you returned me to human space yourself? Impossible. You know too much about our defenses, our technology, What if I went back as your representative, as someone trying to stop this war? Thyravel stared at him. Explain. Jake took a deep breath. You said the war started because of misunderstandings. What if we tried to fix those misunderstandings? You could come with me to human space and meet with our leaders. We could try to find peace. The military council would never allow it. They do not have to know until we are already gone. Thyravel was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her thinking, weighing options in her mind. Finally, she spoke. It would be seen as the ultimate betrayal, taking an enemy prisoner to meet with enemy leaders. I would be declared a traitor by my own people. But Kethnox would be safe, Jake said, and maybe we could save lives on both sides. Mother, Kethnox said quietly, Jake's people are not monsters. He proved that when he saved me. Maybe there are others like him. Thyravel looked at her son, then at Jake. You would be willing to help broker peace between our species? Even after everything we have done to your people? If it means children like Kethnox do not have to grow up in a war, yes. Meanwhile, on the human ship UES Defiance, Kate Sullivan studied intelligence reports in her small office. As a naval intelligence officer, she had access to classified information about the war with the Zalathi Empire. Most of it was bad news. Human colonies were falling faster than they could be defended. The aliens had better technology and seemed to understand human tactics too well. But one report caught her attention. Missing in action. Sergeant Jake Morrison, last seen during the evacuation of New Haven Colony. Kate had served with Jake on 2 previous missions. He was a good soldier and a better man. She had always hoped he would make it through the war alive. She pulled up more details about New Haven. The colony had been completely destroyed by orbital bombardment. No human survivors had been found. But intelligence suggested that Zalathi forces had recovered something from the ruins. Kate made a decision. She opened a communication channel to her commanding officer. Admiral Brooks, I request permission to investigate the fate of Sergeant Morrison. I believe he may have been captured alive. Denied, Sullivan. We cannot spare resources for rescue missions. Sir, if Morrison is alive and in enemy hands, he could provide valuable intelligence about their operations. There was a pause. What do you need? A small reconnaissance ship and a team of volunteers. If Morrison is alive, we need to know what the aliens are doing with him. Kate did not know it yet, but her investigation would soon intersect with Thyravel's desperate plan. The paths of 2 species were about to cross in ways that neither side expected. Back on Nexus Prime, Thyravel stood at the window of her quarters, looking out at the alien sky. Kethnox was asleep in his room, finally at peace after weeks of worry about Jake's fate. You are thinking about the human's proposal, Zara Lynn said from the doorway. It is madness, Thyravel replied. To take a human prisoner into their own territory, to speak of peace when our peoples are at war. But I have watched him with my son. I have seen the way he thinks, the way he makes decisions. He chose to save Kethnox when he could have saved himself. That is not the action of a monster. The military council will not see it that way. Thyravel turned from the window. Then perhaps it is time they learned what their enemy is truly like. If Jake Morrison is an example of human nature, then we have been fighting the wrong war for the wrong reasons. You are going to do it, are you not? Yes, Thyravel said with finality. I am going to take him home. and I am going to see if peace is possible between our peoples." In the darkness of his room, Jake lay awake thinking about Earth. He had not seen blue skies or felt natural sunlight in weeks. But if his plan worked, if Thyravel was brave enough to try it, maybe he would see home again. More importantly, maybe children like Keth Knox would grow up in a galaxy where humans and Zalathi were friends instead of enemies. It was a slim hope, but it was better than no hope at all. Thyravel's ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was small enough to avoid detection, but large enough for the three of them to live in during the journey to human space. The walls curved in smooth lines that seemed to flow like water, and everything glowed with soft light that changed color based on the ship's mood. "This vessel is called Star Whisper," Thyravel explained as she showed Jake around. "It was built for diplomatic missions, not war. It can hide from most sensors and travel faster than military ships." Keth Knox ran ahead of them, excited to be going on an adventure. He had never left Nexus Prime before, and everything about the ship fascinated him. "Why did you decide to bring him?" Jake asked. "This journey could be dangerous." "Because leaving him behind would be more dangerous," Thyravel replied. "Commander Vex Dern would use him against me, and because he needs to see your people as more than enemies. If we are going to build peace, it must start with the young." They left Nexus Prime in the middle of the night cycle, when most of the orbital sensors were focused on other areas. Thyravel had filed a flight plan claiming they were going to a nearby research station. By the time anyone discovered the truth, they would be too far away to stop. Jake sat in the passenger area, watching alien stars slide past the windows. Keth Knox sat beside him, pointing out constellations and telling stories about Zalathi mythology. "That star cluster is called the Hunter's Prize," Keth Knox said. "Legend says it was created when a great warrior defeated a monster that was eating other stars." "In human mythology, we see different pictures in the stars," Jake said. "We call them things like the Great Bear and the Swan." "I would like to learn about human stories," Keth Knox said. "Do your people have tales about heroes who save others?" "Many of them. Some of our greatest heroes were ordinary people who did extraordinary things when others needed help." From the pilot's seat, Thyravel listened to their conversation. She was learning as much about humans from Jake as he was learning about Zalathi from her family. 3 days into the journey, the ship's alarms began to sound. Thyravel's hands moved quickly over the control panels, bringing up displays that showed several ships approaching from behind. "Zalathi military vessels," she said, grimly. "Commander Vex Dern must have discovered our real destination." Jake moved to look at the displays. The pursuing ships were larger and more heavily armed than Star Whisper. "Can we outrun them?" "For a while. But they will catch us before we reach human space." "What happens if they catch us?" Thyravel's expression was grim. "They will execute all of us for treason." The chase lasted for hours. Thyravel used every trick she knew to stay ahead of the military ships. She flew through asteroid fields and used the gravity of planets to change direction quickly. But the pursuing vessels were gaining ground. "There is a human patrol in this system," Jake said, reading the sensor displays with Thyravel's help. "If we can reach them, they might protect us." "Or they might attack us," Thyravel pointed out. "We are still technically enemies." "Not anymore. We are carrying a message of peace." Thyravel made a decision. She changed course toward the human ships, broadcasting a message on human military frequencies. "This is Thyravel of the Zalathi Empire. I carry a human prisoner named Jake Morrison and request safe passage to meet with your leaders. We come seeking peace between our peoples." For several minutes, there was no response. Then a human voice crackled over the communications system. "This is Captain Ben Carter of the UES Defiance. Thyra Vel, you are in violation of human space. Prepare to be boarded." "Ben Carter?" Jake said in surprise. "That is my friend from the medical corps. He took over the communications." "Ben, this is Jake Morrison. I am alive and unharmed. The Zalathi with me saved my life and wants to negotiate peace." There was a pause. "Jake, we thought you were dead. What is your status?" "I am free and here by choice. Please, Ben, we need your help. There are Zalathi military ships chasing us, and if they catch us, any chance for peace dies with us." The human patrol ships moved to intercept the Zalathi pursuers. Jake watched through Star Whisper's windows as the two groups of vessels faced each other in space. For a moment, it looked like a battle would begin. Then Commander Vex Dern's voice came over the radio. "Human ships, return our criminals to us immediately. They have violated our laws and stolen military secrets." "Negative," Captain Carter replied. "Jake Morrison is a human citizen, and his companions have requested asylum. Stand down." "We will not stand down. Prepare to be destroyed." The Zalathi ships opened fire. The human vessels returned fire, and space lit up with weapon beams and explosions. Jake watched in horror as the violence he had hoped to prevent played out before his eyes. "We have to stop this," he said. Thyra Vel was already moving. She activated the ship's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. "All ships, cease fire! This is exactly what we came to prevent." Her voice cut through the battle communications. Both sides paused their attacks. "Commander Vex Dern," Thyra Vel continued, "I am invoking my right as a noble of the Empire to demand trial by combat. Face me in single-ship battle. Winner takes all." "You would fight your own people for these humans?" Vex Dern's voice was filled with disgust. "I fight for the future of all our children." The trial by combat was an ancient Zalathi tradition. Both sides had to honor it, even in the middle of a battle. Vex Dern accepted the challenge. The two Zalathi ships separated from their fleets and began to circle each other. Thyra Vel's diplomatic vessel was smaller and faster, but Vex Dern's military ship had better weapons and armor. Jake watched helplessly as the two ships danced around each other, trading weapon fire. Keth Knox held his hand tightly, afraid for his mother. "She is the best pilot in the Empire," Keth Knox whispered. "She will win." The battle was fierce but brief. Thyra Vel used her ship's speed and agility to stay out of range of Vex Dern's heavy weapons. She targeted his engines and weapon systems with precise shots, slowly disabling his ship without destroying it. Finally, Vex Dern's vessel went dark, drifting powerless in space. "It is finished," Thyra Vel announced. "By the ancient laws, I have won the right to continue our mission." The Zalathi military ships retreated, carrying Vex Dern with them. The human patrol ships escorted Star Whisper toward their base, still uncertain about what was happening, but willing to listen. As they flew through space together, Jake realized something important. Thyra Vel had just fought against her own people, to protect him and their mission of peace. She had risked everything on the hope that humans and Zalathi could find a better way to coexist. "Why did you do it?" he asked her. "Why risk so much for peace with people you barely know?" Thyra Vel looked at her son, then at Jake. "Because I have learned something from watching you with Keth Knox. You see him not as an enemy, but as a child who deserves protection and love. If there are more humans like you, then peace is not only possible, it is necessary." Keth Knox smiled and squeezed Jake's hand. "Mother is the bravest person in the galaxy." Jake looked out at the human ships flying alongside them and felt something he had not experienced in months: hope. They were going home, and they were bringing with them the possibility of ending a war that should never have started. The hardest part of their journey was over. Now came the even more difficult task of convincing two species to give up their hatred and fear in favor of understanding and cooperation. But for the first time since this whole adventure began, Jake believed it might actually be possible. The human military station Omega-7 hung in space like a metal city. Jake had never been so happy to see the blue and white colors of Earth's flag painted on the hull. After weeks among the Zealothi, even the harsh lines and sharp angles of human architecture looked beautiful. Captain Ben Carter met them in the docking bay with a full security detail. Jake could see the tension in his old friend's face as Thyravel and Keth Knox stepped off their ship. The guards held their weapons ready, but did not point them directly at the aliens. "Jake Morrison," Ben said with a grin. "You look terrible." "Good to see you too, Ben." Jake embraced his friend, then stepped back. "I want you to meet Thyravel and her son Keth Knox. They saved my life and risked everything to bring me home." Ben studied the two Zealothi carefully. Thyravel stood tall and proud despite being surrounded by enemy soldiers. Keth Knox stayed close to his mother but looked around with curious eyes. "Ma'am," Ben said formally to Thyravel, "I am Captain Carter. Jake speaks highly of you." "Captain Carter," Thyravel replied in careful English. "I hope we can speak about ending this war between our peoples." Before Ben could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and Jake heard the announcement he had been dreading. "All hands to battle stations. Multiple Zealothi vessels approaching. This is not a drill." Through the docking bay windows, Jake could see ships emerging from hyperspace, an entire Zealothi fleet, led by a massive battleship that could probably destroy the station by itself. "Vexdern," Thyravel said grimly. "He followed us." Kate Sullivan burst into the docking bay, her intelligence officer uniform crisp despite the emergency. She stopped short when she saw the aliens, her hand moving instinctively toward her sidearm. "Jake," she said in amazement, "we have been looking for you for weeks." "Kate, these are friends. They want to help end the war." Kate looked skeptical. "Right now, we have bigger problems. That Zealothi fleet out there is demanding we surrender. You and them immediately." "Let me talk to them," Thyravel said. "I can reason with Vexdern." Admiral Brooks arrived with more security personnel. He was a tall man with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too many battles. He looked at Thyravel and Keth Knox with barely concealed hostility. "So these are our supposed peace ambassadors," he said coldly. "They brought a fleet with them." "Admiral," Jake said quickly, "Thyravel fought against that fleet to protect our mission. She defeated their commander in single combat to give us the right to be here." "Convenient story. How do we know this is not all an elaborate trap?" Keth Knox, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. His young voice carried clearly in the tense room. "Because Jake saved my life when he could have left me to die," the child said in careful English. "Because my mother chose honor over duty to her empire. Because we want our children to grow up without war." The simplicity and sincerity of his words cut through the adult suspicions. Admiral Brooks looked down at the small alien child and saw something he had not expected. Hope. The communication system crackled to life. Commander Vexdern's voice filled the docking bay. Human station. You have 1 hour to surrender the traitors Theravel and Keth Knox, along with the human prisoner. If you refuse, we will destroy your station and everyone on it. Admiral, Theravel said urgently, let me speak with him. I can explain what we are trying to do. Brooks hesitated, then nodded to Kate. Open a channel. Vexdern, Theravel said as her image was broadcast to the Zalathi fleet. I stand here not as a traitor, but as a mother trying to build a better future for our children. You stand there as a criminal who has betrayed her own species, Vexdern replied. Return to face justice, and the humans will be spared. What justice is there in perpetuating a war built on misunderstanding? Jake stepped into view of the camera. Commander Vexdern, I am Sergeant Jake Morrison. Your people are not our enemies. This war started because both sides feared what they did not understand. Silence, human. You corrupted Theravel with your alien ways. He saved my son's life, Theravel said fiercely. What alien way is that? What corruption teaches someone to protect a child? Keth Knox moved to stand beside Jake. The image of the small Zalathi child holding hands with the human soldier was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. Uncle Vexdern, Keth Knox said, using the Zalathi term for a family friend. Jake is good. He protected me when the sky burned. He teaches me about human stories where heroes save people. Are we not supposed to be heroes too? There was silence from the Zalathi fleet. Jake could imagine the crews watching this exchange, seeing their commander's certainty challenged by a child's innocent questions. You have been deceived, young one, Vexdern said finally, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Admiral Brooks stepped forward. Commander, I propose a different solution. Let us sit down and talk. Send representatives to this station, and we will do the same. Give diplomacy a chance before more blood is shed. Diplomacy with humans is impossible. You are too different from us. Are we? Jake asked. Your people love their children, so do we. Your people value honor and sacrifice, so do we. Your people want to build a future where their families can be safe and happy, so do we. How different can we really be? For long minutes, no one spoke. The tension in the docking bay was so thick Jake could almost taste it. Then, surprisingly, a new voice came over the communication system. Father, perhaps we should listen. It was a younger Zalathi voice, speaking in accented English. Jake could hear Vexdern arguing with someone off camera. My son serves on the flagship, Theravel whispered to Jake. Vexdern brought him to witness what he thought would be our execution. The younger voice spoke again. If Theravel's child can stand with humans in peace, why cannot we at least hear what they have to say? More voices joined in, crew members on various ships asking questions, expressing doubts about their mission. Jake realized that the image of him protecting Keth Knox, and now the child's obvious affection for humans, was having a powerful effect on the Zalathi fleet. Finally, Vexdern spoke again. His voice was tired, uncertain. Very well. I will send 3 representatives to your station. But if this is a trap, it is not a trap, Admiral Brooks said firmly. You have my word as an officer and a gentleman, and mine as a mother and a noble of the Empire, Theravel added. Over the next several hours, Representatives from both fleets met in Omega-7's main conference room. Jake found himself at the center of negotiations between species, translating not just languages but entire ways of thinking. The talks were difficult. Both sides had grievances, fears, and misunderstandings built up over months of war. But slowly, piece by piece, they began to work through the problems. They discovered that the war had started when a human exploration ship accidentally triggered an ancient Zalathi warning system. The aliens had interpreted this as an act of aggression and responded with force. The humans, not understanding what had happened, assumed they were under unprovoked attack. "All of this death and destruction," Kate said sadly, "because we could not talk to each other." "But we are talking now," Kath Knox pointed out, "and nobody is dying." By the end of the day, they had reached a preliminary agreement. Both fleets would withdraw to their own territories, while diplomatic teams worked out the details of a permanent peace treaty. Jake would serve as a liaison between species, helping to prevent future misunderstandings. Most importantly, they established protocols for communication and cultural exchange. Centers would be built where humans and Zalathi could learn about each other in safety. As the Zalathi representatives prepared to return to their ships, Vex Dern approached Jake privately. "I owe you an apology, Human Morrison," he said stiffly. "I called you a corrupter and an enemy. I see now that you are simply a person trying to do what you believe is right." "We all are, Commander. That is what I hope our people can learn about each other." Vex Dern nodded slowly. "Perhaps my son was right. Perhaps it is time to listen instead of fight." Later, as the fleets prepared to separate, Jake stood with Thyra Vell and Kath Knox in the observation deck of Omega-7. The stars looked different now, less like barriers between worlds and more like bridges connecting them. "What will you do now?" Jake asked Thyra Vell. "Return to Nexus Prime and face the consequences of my choices. Some will call me a traitor, but others will see the wisdom in what we have accomplished." "And Kath Knox? He will grow up in a galaxy where humans and Zalathi are learning to be friends instead of enemies. That is worth any price I might pay." Kath Knox looked up at Jake with his large dark eyes. "Will I see you again?" "I hope so. I would like to visit your world properly someday. As a friend instead of a prisoner, I would like that too. And maybe I can visit Earth and see the blue skies you told me about." 3 months later, Jake stood in the newly built Human Zalathi Cultural Exchange Center on the neutral planet of Haven's Rest. Children from both species played together in the gardens outside, their laughter mixing in the alien air. Thyra Vell had been cleared of all charges and now served as the Zalathi ambassador to humanity. Kath Knox attended the center's school, learning alongside human children and making friends that would last his lifetime. Commander Vex Dern had become an unlikely advocate for peace, using his military influence to support the new alliance between species, and Jake Morrison, the human,